This trail, our main goal, of course, is to work with the trail that I think neighborhood and NPS came up with, and work with that as what we started with, and then create what you see in red. What we're most interested in, we talked about like the heritage trees, of course. This trail is going to interpret some of the larger trees, the more unique trees that are at the site. The pond is definitely a very interesting feature. It has water in it now, which means that it can hold water fairly well, if it can hold any water right now, and it was full of birds. And so definitely very peaceful, ringed with fairly large trees. Definitely one of the most scenic spots. Didn't feel like you were in the middle of this part of Austin when you were sitting there. So our goal really is to make sure that this trail hit as many of those spots as possible. And this does sort of have a transportation or connectivity implication because it connects to 183. But when we got to 183, it's not likely, because this potential gift of city land is so small, there's going to be a parking lot in that area, at least given those constraints. We sort of made it a loop. Whether that will be a potential access point or not is a question that it definitely, taking the trail to 183 definitely didn't seem like something that was useful at this point in time, though there may be a reason to do it. So we made the loop with two crossings that I think can happen on the creek without too much trouble. Some of those areas have some significant topography. Where did we see? I think
the berm.
Yeah,
I
right.
think that was this.
Right here. It was kind of unique. It was really sandy soil. We don't see that very much on this side of town, and so whether that was a giant fill dump site at one point, I don't know. I mean, it was really sand like I don't see on the east side. So I don't know. The trees were fairly young. We worried about the trail there, so we pulled it back from the edge a little bit. But it is I don't know, 25 feet, do you think? 20 feet maybe?
Drop off.
Side there. Pretty significant for the area, at least.
A question, you're saying you were up on the ridge there a little bit, above the drop-off.
That's right.
Okay.
And so that's why you can see here the floodplain delineation is where the color changes, and that trail is right there on the edge, because of the topography, that would be where the floodplain changes. So one other thing I think is that we did feel confined in certain places by the nature of the floodplain. The floodplain is the property donation, so in areas it's pretty tight. And you can see that the trail concept originally left that area. And so I think in our charge was to pull that back in and make sure that it's inside of the donated area on either side, because the area is retained for private use. So what we have, and if this trail goes in first, it may not make as much sense to have a trailhead in the middle of nowhere. And so maybe if this went in a first phase, might have to pull it closer to the practice fields where it makes sense to have a trailhead. But right now we have a loop starting right next to the crossings on the utility easement, and moving to this after the junction of a number of creeks and crossing there, staying in an upland, visiting some of those big trees, and then eventually curving around. And there's some interesting, like a well or a cistern or something there. Maybe some interesting cultural artifacts that we can talk about.
And we also made a note of some nice stands of trees or groves that would be pleasant sitting areas or just picnic areas. And we used the GPS unit to mark some of those, and those will come in your deliverable. We'll describe those and have a photograph too.
Do you know the distance of this bit of trail?
We don't. We didn't. It was pretty thick, and so we made points and put this together based on the waypoints that we made. And so we didn't walk at all with a GPS. And this is the first time it's existed, so, and we'll have that soon, but we don't know now. Does anybody know what that distance was?
A half mile.
A half a mile, and so we'll probably be just under a mile with the whole trail.
Did y'all go in down there at that clearing, after lunch, when we saw y'all break off from the power line
Down there.
right away? Did you go in through any of that watershed property and look at,
Through this.
well, south of there?
That's what we walked.
We went, didn't we go down?
That's what I was thinking, you went in around there.
Oh, yes, we did.
So decided
Yeah,
to-
we
was a long
followed
We
journey.
followed this whole
and then went.
easement, or not easement, just old ranch road. And of course, we could take it to here, but it's so straight. We didn't really discuss it, but I felt it lacked a certain natural quality that, I mean, unless it was useful to go there and then come back to make sure that you're inside of this property boundary. You could have a spur that does something in that area, but we didn't
Well, that
really
yellow line,
explore
which
that.
is where the spine trail started out, and we are discussing shifting it more to the right of way, the power line. We went out and peeked at that area, and it's got some really attractive qualities where the yellow line is through the watershed.
With unique trees or large trees? Or just
Yeah,
otherwise
well,
pretty?
just pretty woods
Interesting
and
Right, right,
pretty canopy, I guess. yeah.
right, you can tell from the picture.
We didn't get everywhere because of time constraints.
Definitely, that was a lot of ground to cover, and there's a section of this that is conceptual in nature. I will say
Yay for
that.
another day.
Yeah.
It's, thank you all. That's